Hey guys, thank you so much for clicking play on this video. We're really excited, starting off 2025 the right way, really trying to invest in a relationship with Jesus. It's the utmost importance, and this one right here is a good one. We have Graham, we got Bryce, we also have Alexander Chavez coming back to the podcast. We're pumped about this, and we have a new friend we're introducing, Markus Atencio, everybody. It's going to be a sweet episode talking about in this new year, how we moving forward. We're also talking about relationships, okay? That's a hot topic. And also this, discipleship. We exist to make disciples. How does that all work? Stay tuned, and we can't wait to show you this amazing episode. Later, guys.
Welcome back to the Hills Youth Podcast. It is 2025. That's insane. You want to know what's crazy? I graduate this year. Graham finishes his junior year of high school, and for some reason, Marcus and Alex are still here. But we love them and we support them. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you for the welcome, Bryce.
Yeah,
that was awesome. I'm a great welcome. Thank you.
What a good, what a good, what a good introduction.
Yeah. For some reason, we're still here.
Well, it is Farmington, but we love it here. It's great. It's warm year round for some reason. We're supposed to have snow, but I haven't seen it.
It is not warm year round
It
today.
is.
I woke up this morning. I tried to get in my truck, and my windshield wipers were frozen to my windshield.
Well, you live in Aztec. I guess that makes
That's-
sense.
it's the same temperature.
Bryce, you want to do an ice bath with me?
No.
Ooh.
Come on, man.
I'll take a bath with
All right,
you.
everybody
Wow.
here, everybody on this podcast, minus G, and I'm just kidding, you can come if you want, G, is invited to an ice bath sometime this next week.
I
do it.
don't.
Come on, you got it.
What?
Come
Let's
on,
do it.
you got
Let's
it.
do it.
Let's do it.
I know it's
this
supposed
is,
to be all.
This is bonding right here.
I know
He's
it's
asking
bonding.
us to
I
do
know it's
something
bonding.
hard with him,
Okay,
and we're
fine.
going to do it.
Fine.
I feel like this is how you kick off a good year.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
gotta
Ah.
do something a little difficult.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you got to change it up a little bit.
Gotta,
push
gotta,
yourself.
gotta,
Gotta
shock-
leave the
shock-
past in the
literally
past.
shock your body. to
Okay,
be like, hey,
I've
we're gonna
heard
be-
that
it's
they're
gonna be
good for
unexpected.
you. I've never participated in one. I mean, and like it just sounds so terrifying to me.
It is.
I don't like the idea of breaking ice and then getting on the body of getting in the body of water that the ice was on.
To
That
be
just sends like a bad message.
Okay,
to me.
to be fair, it's not completely frozen over. It's
Respect.
like where we're at right now, so we won't have to break ice. Maybe in a month, but right now, we're good. We'll throw that on social media when it happens. It better
Let's
happen.
run it.
The title of this episode will be Breaking Ice. That's what we're gonna call it.
Breaking Bad.
So, but
not.
you know what?
Oh.
I suppose, you know, it's a new experience and it's a new year. So we're moving forward. And I think one of the biggest parts about moving forward is by learning from what we've done in the past. You know, learning from those mistakes. And, you know, I definitely don't look like it, but I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. That's a joke. I've made a lot of mistakes, done a lot of not necessarily crazy things, but things behind closed doors. I had a porn addiction. There was a time in my life where I was definitely a really big liar. I don't know the word that I'm looking for there, but I lied a lot, especially to my parents. And I think as I've gotten older, I've learned, you know, don't lie to your parents. My mom's like a hound for that stuff. Like she will find out if you're lying. She'll feel my pulse. Like it's crazy. She's good at that. But, you know.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't see the point in lying to my parents to the point where they need to feel my pulse. But
I mean,
that might just be me.
yeah. My mom has never put me on a lie detector test.
Yeah, no. I usually just
but, you
tell
know,
the truth. Or
Really, we have a polygraph at the house. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was like, wait, no way.
just kidding.
I was like, no way, right now?
Let me try that. I want to see if it works.
Like, yeah, I was like, I'm gonna see who's lying or whatnot. But yeah, no, I love the way that you talk about stepping into the new year.
Yeah.
That's definitely awesome. Leaving 2024 behind, taking the good things from it, but leaving the bad things behind, not carrying them over to, I
Yeah.
guess this new 2025
I
to
know.
thrive.
It's still
in
so weird.
2025.
It's weird to say out loud, right? Isn't it? Like 2025. It's
It
weird to
is.
say out loud that you're actually there. Like,
I-
it's actually happening.
There was a lot of world-ending apocalyptic events that were supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I think the world was supposed to like go into global warming, heating.
Like a
thing.
black hole or something.
Well,
like that.
Yeah,
I mean, we got.
something like
I'm just saying, playing devil's advocate here. It has been not even the very cold this December. Like we did not have a very cold December.
Why are you so caught up on the cold?
Yeah, dude.
I don't know.
Like, why are we
because-
going
Are
back
you
to this
okay,
again?
Bryce?
Like,
you
he's
okay?
like, he
I'm
thinks
just
that
saying.
it's sunny,
I'm just
palm
saying.
trees
I'm
outside?
just saying. No, it's not palm trees. It's cold, but it's not as cold as it usually is. Can I get it? Can you guys
Bryce,
at least agree with
how
me
many
on that
layers are you wearing right now, dude?
one? 1, 2. But
2
I just like
layers.
wearing flannels.
Flannels are good.
I love
Flannels.
flannels.
I like when Alex wears flannels.
Stop.
Alex can make a flannel look really good.
Stop.
Clip that.
Oh, stop it.
Pause.
Yeah, you're wrong, Bryce. Anyways,
Oh.
moving
I'm
forward.
always wrong.
But we're moving forward.
Yeah,
We're
we are moving
moving
forward
forward.
in this
Yeah,
conversation.
learning from our
Okay.
mistakes.
literally right now.
Oh, I guess I'm doing this. So yeah, moving forward, learning from our past mistakes. You know, I've kind of talked about a little bit of mine. Do any of you guys like, you know, it's a pressing thing. You know, it doesn't have to be anything big yet, but just like, what are some things that come to your mind? Some things that you have to, maybe from learning from last year and taking into this new year.
Oh man, learning from last year, definitely prioritizing my time in the Bible is definitely one that has stood out to me. Vaughn had talked about it a little bit. Alex and I, we have a group that we go to, and Alex had brought this up a little while back, but I come back to it often. Is I've been a Christian for a little while in my life now.
Yeah.
I've been a very, very devoted Christian for about 2 years now, but I've always went to church. I've always, I guess, known what the Bible is, getting into the Bible and stuff, but I've never read the Bible front to back. And Alex kind of put this question out there, and he asked all of us. He says, "How many of us have read the Bible front to back?" And I'm the youngest one in that group. I'm 19 years of age, and none of us have read the Bible front to back. And that was definitely a moment that he called us all higher.
Yeah.
And something that I noticed is Jamal, one of the guys in our group, he started reading the Bible front to back. I am now reading the Bible front to back in this Bible study that Alex had actually sent us. He's almost done with it.
Really?
And yeah,
So when did you start, Alex?
So I started back in, I think it was last March is when I started. And what I noticed was reading, especially because I'm in the Old Testament right now. I'm almost done with him I'm in Daniel right now. But what I noticed is you see so much about God's character, and you see so much about who he is, and you get to understand him differently. And I think that's really important going into the new year with kind of this idea of how can I understand God differently? How can I grow? And I think that with the theme of moving forward, this is a perfect way to start. If we're looking biblically, what a better way to start but by opening your Bible and just reading. Because you're able to understand what God loves, what he hates, and just honestly who he is. And you get to see his grace just put on full display. And it's a beautiful, beautiful narrative about this is who God is. This is the God we serve.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are like New Testament exclusive. Like they don't really read the Old Testament very much. They don't, you know what I mean? It's about, and that's fine. But I will say, as I've, last year, for one of the DU things we did, we read the Bible front to back in 90 days. I think it did in like 94 or something like that. But
Yeah, it was not fun.
it was
That
was not
terrible.
fun.
It's like
It was not
15
fun.
chapters a day or something.
Yeah, no, it was
it was
bad.
ridiculous. I remember. that.
Yeah, no, it was rough. But so something that I gained appreciation for the Old Testament, because I hadn't really read that much. Like that was the part that I had been least well versed in. And studying the Old Testament, reading that, the wages of sin are death, right? That's, you can see that in the Old Testament. You can see before Christ died, like that, like you can see the wages for every sin are death, and that it's very upfront and very consequential in the Old Testament. And I think it's important to have the whole picture, to be able to understand the whole thing, because when you're missing parts of the Bible that I've never read this, but you know what I mean? You are missing important things selected by God for you in your walk. There's always going to be something that you can get out of every book in there. Even some of the books that are like there's going to be more valuable books than others, but every single book was put there for a reason.
Yeah.
So I mean, my encouragement to listeners and everybody here is to be well versed, and whether it's, I mean, you don't have to read the Bible in 90 days. If you're gonna start one of, I'm to the listener here, if you're gonna start one of those like 90-day Bible plans in the Bible app or whatever, and then you stop at day 15, and you start tricking, I kind of want to read Psalms, I don't really feel like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that is so like it is way better to read it in a year and a half, right, and to just work your way through the whole thing rather than trying to, you know what I mean, and failing to do certain things. God moves in everything, and so just make sure you're ready for that.
See, and I think I agree with you, because I think it is one thing of, okay, I've read the whole Bible, but I just read it.
Yeah.
Do I understand the context? Do I understand, what, because there's so much to unpack. And I honestly think you could spend 10 lifetimes trying to discern everything, you still won't get it.
Yeah.
Still won't even come close. But I think when you take your time, because the one that I'm doing, it's a guided reading, and it's called the Bible Recap by Tara Lee Cobble. And what I like so much about it is she breaks it down for you. That way, when you go into it, you're like, okay, I just read this whole thing of scripture. I don't really know what this means. Or, oh, I didn't think that this metaphor, this phrase meant this. So I think that whenever you do undertake this very big task of reading the whole Bible, do it guided.
Completely agree.
Because you'll get so much more from it.
Completely agree. There will be, like I said, every book is placed there for a reason,
Right.
and you're going to get more out of some books than others. But if you, there's a lot of times you're going to read stuff, and you're like, you should be getting something out that you're not, because you're not being willful enough because you're ignorant, and you're not being willful enough to seek out extra information from either people or guided readings or whatever it is that can do it. I was talking with somebody who I do readings with, and she told me it's way better to do it with you than by myself, because there are certain things that that I wouldn't have picked up on. And I feel the exact same way when I'm reading with somebody like Chad, or I'm pursuing my faith as a group. I have a thing at my school, whatever that is. When I'm with those people, there's something that somebody else will point out that I would have just completely skimmed over and missed. So I completely agree with you, Alex. Whether having the people, whether having guided reading or student Bible, whatever that is, it makes it so much easier to be able to get the things you need to get out of it.
So is that what you would say? Is that what you would say people who are maybe watching, listening? I think we're kind of all in agreement that this is something you should do. Kicking off the new year, it's time for new habits.
100%.
Why not try to read, even if it's just the Old Testament or the
Just
New
the New
Testament,
Testament, yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Do it in a group, do it with your homies, and honestly, see where it takes you.
Absolutely.
I think that is a super, super good idea, because this whole New Year's resolution and all that stuff that a lot of people talk about is they want to know how to make more money, get into better shape, just to upgrade their lifestyle in any way. And they do the same thing year and year again. But if we have a book that has all the answers in one, why wouldn't we read that book?
Yeah.
There's a guided reading on an app that is free on our phone. The accessibility is so easy, but we still tend to not use it. Why is that? I mean, why is it, like you said, you can understand it by someone teaching it to you for free, but we still don't go out and grasp it. But we watch the motivational videos.
Right.
We go to the gym and we try new workouts. We watch food talk. We watch everything we can in order to better ourselves, maybe for our bodies or for our money or for everything. But why not our spiritual health, Why not make that the priority? Why not dive into the Bible when you're feeling anxious, or when you're feeling lonely, or when you have doubts about something, or when you're feeling burnt out in the first month of this New Year's resolution?
See, I guess I'll jump on this. So I have a problem with New Year's resolutions to begin with. So what is it? I think I saw a study that said about 92% of people fail their New Year's resolution within the first 2 weeks. And what I noticed especially being from a church, is that so many people will challenge themselves to read the Bible all the way through, or they will challenge themselves to go from just a Christmas and Easter Christian or just a couple weeks out of the year Christian to going to church every week. And, I've seen that. I teach Sunday school, and just in the last couple of weeks, I've seen it's such an influx of kids, such a massive growth. And I'm so happy about it, but at the bottom of my heart, I know most of these kids aren't going to be here in this many days. And that's just my problem. I've never been much of a New Year's resolution guy. I think that's why we need to take a look at what we did wrong last year and how we can change it this year. And for me, I have never been great about opening my Bible every day. I did do the DU thing. I read the Bible in 90 days. It sucked. I still need to go through and reread some chapters because, in 90 days, you're reading 15 chapters a day. It was good for me. It taught me discipline, but there were some things that I wasn't grasping all the way, but I couldn't stop and focus on it because I had to continue reading.
Yeah,
So-
and yeah, that's definitely tough when it's rushed and stuff like that. I'm doing the same plan as Alex, where I can kind of break it down. I've got a little bit of lenient room. She reads it to me, she explains it to me. But why did it suck? Like you said, it sucked. But why is it that being disciplined in the Bible sucks, even as a Christian?
Well, it's not so much that it sucked being in the Word. It sucked that it was so quick
Okay.
that I was reading so much and I wasn't able to retain as much as I wish that I could have.
Gotcha.
And since that point, I open up the Bible app, I'll read the daily verse, and then I probably won't open my physical Bible until Sunday. And for me, that's definitely a mistake that I'm making, that I'm trying to improve on this year, is definitely opening my Bible and reading a couple of verses every day.
If you only eat on Sunday, you're gonna starve.
Exactly.
Um,
And I was kind of dogging on something that we did, but Vaughn did. We were downstairs. We were having a meeting before we started recording, and he did say something that I thought was kind of right. So kudos to him. And it was him talking about, if you have sin in your life, you are not living for God. You can claim that you're living for God, but you're not. And for me, for so long, I was coming to church, but behind closed doors, I was doing, I was
Right.
watching porn, doing all that stuff. And so I was not living for God. A true Christian, a true person who is living their life for God, is going to admit their sin. Everybody sins. We know this. Me, Marcus, Graham, Alex, we all sin. But the difference is we're not living for the world because we're admitting that sin. And we're not doing the crazy things that the world is telling us to do. Yes, we might mess up here and there. I'm sure in the future we're going to have even more mess ups.
Absolutely.
And but we are admitting that sin. We are admitting to ourselves that we have messed up, and we are asking for that forgiveness. If you're not doing that, you're not living for God. And Vaughn just said that, so good job to Vaughn. I'm proud.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah. Props to
I'm
Vaughn on that.
gonna jump on this because I really like this way of kind of thought process, because I think that something that we as modern Christians kind of believe is we kind of treat our salvation like a flu shot. Like, oh, I did that. Or, yeah, I go to church sometimes. And we kind of do the bare minimum. Where, if I say, let's just say hypothetically, I was on my way here tonight and I got hit by a truck. And I show up late, right? And I show up late. And I'm like, hey, guys, I'm super late. Sorry. And you guys were like, well, what happened? And I was like, oh, I got hit by a truck. And you'd be like, nothing happened to you. What's bigger than me, or what's bigger, the truck or God? So if I say, oh, I've had an encounter with God, I've had a real encounter with God, but I'm not changed, I'm a liar.
Yeah.
So, when we do get in our Bibles, when we get into these habits of true repentance, of I need to change, of, kind of like you, Bryce, same thing over here. I used to watch porn. And I used to come on Sunday. I used to come to Sunday service every single Sunday. I served on the media team, on the worship team. You know, I've done those things, and I was still here every single Sunday. But behind closed doors, you know, I was over here watching porn or smoking a doobie. You know, and I think that there's real change whenever you have a real encounter with Christ, and it's leaving the old. You know, the old is gone, the new is here. You know, you're born again, but it also takes work to keep it going.
Yeah.
And so, kind of on the topic of, you know, looking at the past, how are we moving forward? I think it's, you know, let me take real time to devote my life to trying to be the best I possibly can be. And like you said, we're going to fail a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to fail pretty much every day. We're going to sin. We're going to be, you know, we're not going to be our best. But I think that what matters is that we realize we sin, you know, and say, you know what? I messed up. I am a sinner. You know, I need help. But I think the biggest difference is when you run to God. When we run to Him, you know, we're doing what He tells us to do. Come all who are weary, and I will give you rest.
Yeah.
But when we take matters into our own hands of no, I'm going to quit on my own, or no, I know better. You know, forget you, God. What do you know? What do you know about addiction? What do you know about living in sin? You know, let me run away from you. Let me go do this on my own. And I think that's where we really mess up a lot is ourselves. You know, we get in our own way of just go to God with it. And I think that's something that I want to focus on this year is looking at my life from a third person point of view and saying, okay, what do I need to do? You know, where do I need to fix this? What am I hiding from God? You know?
Yeah,
And-
something.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so something I'll say. Something that somebody told me once is the biggest mistake you can make, or one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a Christian, is trusting yourself. No matter where you're at, when you trust yourself rather than trusting God and His influence on your life, you are opening yourself up to sin.
Right.
As we go into a new year, as we go into this, we're trying to renew. We talked about this, everybody's making resolutions. They're all like, you know, and how many of you did you say were first?
I think I saw a study, and it said about 92% of people will fail their New Year's resolution within 2 weeks. And
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
yeah, I think I've already seen people fail their New Year's resolutions. So yeah, it's not great. I think everybody is so caught up in this. Oh, new year, new me.
Yeah. I mean, well,
It's corny.
why do you? It's a calendar. Why do you need to? Why does the calendar tell you got to change and be a completely different person? Do that for God. Do that for yourself. Do that for your family and for your children and for your future. Don't do that because it's 2025 and I really should start doing stuff. That's dumb, man. Instead, identify the areas you're failing. Cut it off.
Yeah.
Cut it off. Right? You do not want to be dead. You do not want to be dead in your sin. You do not want to stay there, regardless of what month it is, what day it is. That's stupid. That is dumb. What isn't dumb is trying to follow God in your everyday life, whether it's January or whether it's July, right? And maybe part of it is setting up New Year's resolutions that you can fail, right? It's like maybe you're setting up stuff like, oh, I'm going to be in the gym every single day or something like that. Well, like, then you miss one day and boom, you failed your resolution. Rather than I am going to get in shape, you can't fail your resolution till the next year, right? But besides all of that stuff, you need to identify where your sin is, cut it off, and move forward. Don't dwell. Don't sit there. Don't think of what a mess up you are. Don't live for Christ. Find your failures, cut them off, and move on.
I love that. I love that. And that actually kind of, both of those, what they were just talking about, ties into what I was going to say, is even though you're a Christian and even though maybe you're a devoted Christian now, like I have been for a couple of years, you're still going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
You're still, stuff is still going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was always like, man, I want to do stuff so I can be seen. And that was always like my goal for a little bit. But once I found out that that wasn't what God wanted for me, God wanted me to serve him, then that stuff started coming. Then I was able to go out on a stage and do something. And then even doing it then, like at Christmas services, I was able to stand beside Vaughn and speak with him. And in no part of that did I want anything for myself. I didn't want to be like, oh, look at me, look at me. I got to do that. I got to stand up there because I was a devoted Christian for so long, and God gave me that finally. But then, like he said, of calling out your mistakes, is sometimes you can't always call out your own mistakes. And that was something big for me, is I had to let go of my pride and my ego, and I had to be like, you know what? Other people can call me higher. And I noticed that on Christmas Day, because on Christmas Day, it was, when I tell you it was like the littlest mistake, I burned out at a stoplight. I burned out at a stoplight for, I don't know, maybe like half of a second. A lady took a picture of me and she posted it all over Facebook. And she completely blew it up. Within like 10 minutes, Alex had texted me and he was like, hey, is this you? And I was like, yeah, that was me. I'm like, not anything that happened. He didn't get mad at me. He wasn't like, dude, be better. Don't know. He was just calling me higher. He said, you know what? Let's step up. We have a Marksman logo on the back of our truck for a reason. We're leaders for a reason. Step up. Then another one of the guys from Marksman put it in the Marksman SWAT group chat, the leader group chat. Put a picture in there. So I had all the Marksman leaders coming at me and being like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? But not one of them, not one person in that whole thing was like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, they're like, hey, dude, just be better. Just step up. I know it was a little mistake. This is an area that we can fix. And although I'm not out there going to parties, drinking, smoking, all that kind of stuff, it was still an area that I can still step up in. And I'm blessed to have guys like that to call me higher, not to shame me, not to put me down, not to belittle me in any way, but just to simply call me higher so that I can step up. Maybe it wasn't that big of a thing, but I can still step up, and I still have these guys.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, 100%. I think something that a lot of people, especially people who are newer to faith, make the mistake in is, everybody's afraid to come and talk about.
Oh, absolutely. No
right?
one wants to share their feelings.
Nobody wants to. Nobody wants to share their feelings. Nobody wants to share their sins. This sucks. I get it, right? I think people also have a misconception on if they go to somebody who's truly godly, who's truly doing their best every day, they're waking up and they're living like Christ, and they talk about one of their faults, one of their sins. Like, there's this expectation that they're gonna berate you, right? And they're gonna like attack, and they're gonna do all of these things like, oh, you got to be better. You got to, you're a failure in this area. And most people, if you're seeking the right counsel from the right people, they're going to take the situation with grace and help you rather than condemning you. They're going to condemn your actions, maybe. They're going to condemn the things that you talked about, but they're not going to condemn you. They're going to help you become a better person, better Christian, better follower and servant of God.
Oh, absolutely. And those are actual Christians, is they're loving God and they're loving others.
Absolutely.
They're saying, follow me as I follow Christ.
Absolutely.
They're not saying, oh, I'm perfect, I'm better, I have never made a mistake, and I'm not going to do that.
And there are Christians that will say that.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And that's
right.
where the reputation comes from.
And
That's why
that
people
is.
are scared, is because they're they think that people are going to tell them to go to hell. You know what I mean? You're you know what I mean? No, those people might, right? But those aren't the people you should be seeking.
No,
counsel
absolutely.
from.
And people even like I've talked to some of the kids in the youth, and they even looking at us as older guys, leaders. They're like, this kid came to me and he's like, I was going to go talk to Alex, one of the kids in our group. He's like, but I was afraid. He's like, I was afraid to talk to both of you guys because I didn't know if you were going to be mad. And I was like, why would we be mad? Why would we want to get you in trouble?
Right.
And we tell them that quite often when we have to have talks with them, is we're like, listen, we're not here to be upset with you. We're not here to get you in trouble. We're here to understand and to help you get better.
Right.
And I think that's where the bad reputation comes from, is some people think they get a little too in their own heads. And they're like, hey, I know everything and you don't, and I'm going to sit there and just belittle you. But I'm a Christian. I'm going to put a Bible verse in my bio, but I'm going to go here and I'm going to shun you for doing the same things that I do behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly.
And us as leaders, we have to step up and we have to be like, you know what? We've made those mistakes. Like you said, we've all had a porn addiction or watched porn, or we've all went to parties or done stuff that we didn't need to do. But we stepped away from that. And that's actually going into the friendships, is we started surrounding ourselves with like-minded people.
Right.
We searched for the people that God wanted us to be around. And now look at us. We can sit here on a podcast as teenagers and talk to an audience of and tell them, listen, you don't have to go through the same things we've already went through.
I think it's also important to understand that not everybody struggles with the same sins.
Oh, absolutely.
no.
Yeah.
But
I-
everybody's the same sinner. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
That's
okay.
a perfect way of putting it.
For example, I have dealt with a insane porn addiction, right? I've dealt with that. You know what I mean? And like, I'm not gonna pretend like it isn't a temptation from time to time. Right? You
Right.
just have
Oh,
to
yeah.
shut it off. But because of people I've seen who are close to my life, I don't party, I don't drink, and that's never been a problem for me. C.S. Lewis has an analogy about British teeth, right? So British people have terrible teeth. Like if you brush them, you can do all these things, and you're going to improve, and you can get them there. But
Yeah.
naturally, they have terrible teeth. Africans naturally have great teeth, right? Like a lot of people don't brush their, in Africa, don't need to brush their teeth
Yeah.
to have shining pearly whites. I've been on a mission trip to Africa. This isn't a stereotype. I can tell you, I've seen it, right? Sometimes our sin is like the teeth, right? And like I said, this isn't my analogy to C.S. Lewis, but some people are going to have the nasty yellow sin in this area and have the pearly whites in this area. And I mean, we had a few podcasts ago when we had our live podcast with Chad. He had talked about, I've dealt with mental health a ton. I'm very open about that. Chad had, he's never felt like that, right? He's never been in a position where he wanted to die or whatever. And so he has in that area white teeth, and in other areas, his testimony has a lot of things, and he struggled with a lot of things that I don't, right? And so it's important to understand and to support, find people, if you're dealing with porn addiction, find people who have dealt with a porn addiction to counsel you. If you're dealing with substance issues, I mean, you don't want to go to AA, go to, you know what I mean, whatever that means for you, go counsel from those people who have dealt with that. You don't want to come to me and ask how to get sober. Like, I'm not going to be your guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? In
Of
the same way that there's a lot of people who you don't want to come and ask them how to get done with porn because they just never got started, they never got hooked, whatever
Yeah,
that
right.
is. And it doesn't mean you're worse than any of them. You just struggle
No.
in this area, and you might not struggle in those areas.
Yeah, you just want someone who has walked that path, someone who's went down the road.
Right.
When you ask someone to guide you or you get a guide for anything in life, they have done it before.
Yeah.
They're called a guide for a reason. And I think the
Absolutely.
Bible is a guide to life. Like opening that Bible and being like, okay, who did what wrong in what area? And for me, I was that athlete, right? I struggled with the partying and the drinking and stuff like that because that's what we were supposed to do as athletes.
Right.
We go win a game, we go party, we go with the girls, do all that. But then once I left that and started coming to God and started coming to church and stuff, it seemed like everything got taken away. And then when I opened the Bible and I started going front to back, I went through the whole book of Job. That was one of the first. It went from Revelation, a little bit of Revelation, then it went into Job. And I went completely through Job. And even Alex had asked me some questions about it and stuff, but I noticed how similar our lives were. We're not the same person at all.
Yeah.
We didn't have the same experiences, but it was similar in just that parable of that, hey, God was like, you know what, devil, you could take anything from him. And Job would sit there and the devil asked him, like, why aren't you giving up? I've taken your money, I've taken your kids, your health, I've taken everything from you. And I read this quote and it sticks with me to this day as it said, the devil took everything away from Job, but to Job, God was his everything. And that just goes to show, like, man, sometimes if you really want to get down and deep, you really want to be a devoted Christian, and you really want to do the things that we are now doing, it's going to suck. You're going to have those flaming arrows. You're going to have those things that come at you. And time again, I think that we get perceived from it, like some people outside that they're like, hey, we can't be like these guys because they're going to judge us or something's going to happen. And we're not like that. But then once they get in here, the flaming arrows are going to start hitting, and then they're going to be like, oh, well, this isn't going to work. So even if they do make it past that first barrier of trusting someone and getting yourself in there, then once you start following God, all these other things are going to start falling apart because of the devil. But I think there are several barriers that you have to get through, but every single one teaches you a little more about yourself and about how you handle things. Like you handled an addiction differently than maybe he would have handled an addiction.
Right.
Yeah.
I've never struggled with anxiety or anything like that or confidence and stuff. And I've talked to Bryce about this a few times. And that's something that he was like, that was not him, nothing like that. He struggled with it. But he's told me, hey, listen, this is how I overcame it. And I'm like, okay, well, this is something that I still haven't overcome. And that's showing a lot of feeling and
Yeah.
being very involved in feelings. I can't do that. He also helps with the 8th graders with me, and I tell him, I even tell all the boys, I'm like, listen, guys, I am not your emotional, huggy, lovey kind of guy.
Yeah.
I don't know how to be like that. I know how to be hard. I know how to yell. I know how to tell you what to do, when to do it, and I know how to be loud.
Right.
With him is he knows him and Alex can both get down on their level of emotion and really pull them in, but then we talk about that as well. As I'm like, I could not be the leader I want to be without these guys.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't just do that on my own. And I think that people have that perception of I've got to come in here alone, I've got to do it alone, and I've
Right.
got to grow alone.
Right. I think a lot of people, to jump on that final point there, a lot of people also think, I'm dealing with this sin, I'm dealing with this addiction, I'm dealing with this whatever. I need to get myself right and overcome this for a little bit at least, and then I go to God and try to, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
right, in the same reason Adam and Eve hid, right? You know what I
Yep.
mean? They made clothes and they hid. And they wanted to, right? You can't hide. And even if you're like, I don't want to do this, I hate this sin, I want to get better, you try to do it alone and try to do it by yourself, you will fail.
Absolutely. You
Go
will,
to
you will
God, go
110%
to
fail.
people. You know
Well,
what I
another
mean?
way you got to think about it is, Jesus didn't come for the spiritually well-off people. He came for everyone. We don't go to the doctor. We don't get well before we go to the doctor, right? So that idea of, no, I need to get my life right before I come
Right.
to Christ. No. Come as you are.
Exactly.
You know,
Don't stay as you are, but come as you are.
right? Don't stay as you are, but come as you are. He is our great physician. He's got the magic touch. Whatever it is, your life will be changed. And I think it is kind of sad that we kind of put that perception of, no, you gotta fix yourself first. No, that comes afterwards.
Right.
Yeah, and I like the way he puts that is like fixing yourself is the destination. And if the destination is far, like however far gone you are, if I wanted to get to New York from here, I would probably take a plane, right?
Yeah.
Even though I don't know the pilot, I still trust him.
Yeah.
Even though maybe I'll get in a taxi, I don't know the driver, I still trust him. I don't know these people, but I trust that they're in control. Even if you don't know God, why can't you trust that he's going to be in control?
Yep.
Why can't you trust that he's going to take you to where you need to be if you're just like, listen, I need to be still and know that he is God. I'm not, he is. I need to
Right.
give it to him.
And if you need to get to know God to be able to completely put your trust in, that's fine. A lot of people do that, right? Know God. When you know God, if you know God, you know you can trust him. You know that's the only person that you can trust.
Absolutely.
I have struggles with relationships. I have struggles with that because of trust issues from the past. I've never had to worry about God doing me wrong.
It's true.
And jumping into, we're cutting sin out. We're going for that. We've talked a lot about relationships. We've talked about seeking counsel. We've talked about you guys' relationship and how you guys are reading the Bible together all the way through front to back.
Well, but not only that, but you guys are reading the Bible together. You go to a life group together, but you guys started a life group together. You started one for 8th grade boys,
Yeah.
and let me tell you, just seeing the growth that has happened because of you two in those 8th graders has been so immense. And I would say that knowing you two, I think that you two have a really strong bond. You guys do that together. You guys go and hang out just out of the blue, go and talk about how you're going to, lead your life group. How did that, come up, I guess?
Well,
Like how did that, like how did this start?
well, you wanna go ahead
Yeah.
because you got the news first.
Okay, so I started doing youth maybe like a year and a half ago. I was doing youth with phenomenal leader. He taught me everything I needed to know, and Markus came along, and he was here for a couple months, and I was here maybe a month prior to Markus. Well, we get a call from Vaughn. I'm sitting in bed, right? I'm sitting in my bed, get a call from Vaughn. I'm like, Vaughn never calls me this early. What's going on? Pick up the phone. I'm like, hello? And he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, this is not Vaughn's tone whatsoever.
No,
If you know Vaughn, then you know. If you know, you know. Like, and so I'm sitting there. I'm like in my bed, and I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, hey, you got to do youth. You and Marcus are doing 8th grade boys together. That's it. And I was like, oh, okay. I kid you not, I did not know what to say. I was sitting there just starstruck, like, what do I do? You know, I've only done this for a couple months, maybe like 2 months. And so for me, stepping in, it was really weird. So I hang up the phone with Vaughn, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I call Marcus.
He calls me. I had gone up. I'd gotten a big old bowl of cereal. I was eating my breakfast and stuff, and all of a sudden, Alex starts texting or calling me, and I was like, okay. I was like, Alex from church, okay, because we weren't even really that close at all. And I picked it up, and he was like, hey, he's like, Vaughn wants us to lead the 8th grade boys together. And I was just like, okay. So I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we're going to be the leaders. We're the new leaders. We're starting like next week. And I was like, okay. And then I just hung up the phone, calm, cool, collective. I didn't eat my breakfast. I got so nervous and so sick. I got up. I remember this like the back of my hand. I got up. I went to my parents' room because my mom was still there. My dad had already taken off to work. And I was like, I'm going to be a leader for 8th grade boys. I'm going to be like a teacher. I'm doing this. And then her first reaction was, didn't you just start? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, something happened, but it happened, and I was scared. And when we first did it, I didn't like it at all. I was like, I don't like this. Kids aren't for me. But I don't think I've ever gotten closer to a group of kids in my life than I did with those boys. And Alex and I talk about it even to this day. That group of boys, we started out with some Tasmanian devils that just did whatever, said whatever, were there to mess around and whatnot. And we found a way. We tried new things. We started doing new things, and we're like, man, these kids are some real leaders. And now that they're stepped up, now that they're in high school, they're leading people. Like we're seeing the fruit that we went out, and we're seeing it now.
Yeah.
Is like these kids, like they're freshmen, but the coach one day was talking to them, and I was there, and he was like, yeah, he's like, they were all praying before the game. And even after the game, we had a hard loss, and they didn't have anything bad to say about the other team. They said, our life group leaders wanted us to pray, and we prayed for them. And just hearing that, I will never forget hearing that one day and just being like, holy cow. It may have been to a C team, JV football team. Maybe it was just a little group of people. Maybe half of them weren't even listening. But we had that impact on a few kids. And they're going to go out to create disciples. And those disciples are going to go out to create disciples. So then one day we could stand before God, and he can be like, look, turn around. And he's going to point at those 2 kids that we were real close with. But then those 2 kids are going to turn around and point at those 4 kids. And it's just going to keep going. And he's like, look at the 380,000 lives you changed just because you poured into these kids.
Yeah.
And I think that there are a lot of leaders out there in New Mexico, or even just Farmington area, that they want to be leaders, that they have the qualities of being leaders, but they just don't step up. They don't want to get uncomfortable. They have the quality to be such a good leader, especially for this new and next upcoming generation, but they don't want to step up.
Yeah, they're
So I
scared of
think
discipleship.
Yeah, they're definitely scared of discipleship, and I think this is their chance to step up and be like, you know what? Hey, I heard this podcast of these teenage kids, these guys, just other than Alex, other than the old man over there in the corner.
What were the dinosaurs like?
Yeah. What was that like? No,
Hey guys,
but
I'm not that old.
How
They-
old are you again?
yeah.
Was Lincoln a cool guy?
Yeah.
He was.
like
He had a cool beard.
JFK, do you
He
remember all
actually
that?
had a really
No.
cool beard.
But like
21, man.
they could
Oh,
be
wow.
leaders like us.
Oh boy! All right.
Whoa.
21.
Jeez.
He's an old man right there.
What was it like?
That was
Dang.
a good
Sorry,
one.
G,
Yeah.
you're gonna have
See,
to cut that
and like
one
even like that, we can still joke around and mess around, and we could just have a good time.
No, for
But
real.
it took all of us getting uncomfortable, right? And having to do things that we weren't comfortable with in order to get here. And it wasn't even anything crazy. Like, yeah, that being a leader, just called out to be a leader just like that. Yeah, that's a shocker. That's something that kind of really hit hard. But we worked around the speed bumps. We made it through. Now they're, like I said, they're leaders, and we have a new group. And this new group They've been throwing us.
Let me tell you. So
Tell how it is.
I started leading a life group when I was in 10th grade, and I started with Zeke, and we've been together ever since. So for 3 years at this point.
Hey,
Well,
3 years.
2 years, but we've been doing it for Anyway,
Congrats.
so me and Zeke have been doing this together for a long time. We started with 6th grade, we moved up to 7th grade, and with this last group, we moved up to 8th grade. And oh boy, I could not imagine starting off with 8th grade, like having no preparation whatsoever and just getting thrown at 8th grade, because 8th grade's hard. They're learning who they are, they're maturing, and they're testing boundaries even more so than 6th graders. 6th graders test boundaries. We all know this. But 8th graders do it in a different sort of way.
Amen.
And definitely moving up with those 7th graders and moving up to 8th grade with them, I'm so thankful that they got you guys too. That, because you guys, like what you were saying earlier, we have different leadership styles.
Absolutely.
You're able to get them under control. Emotional doesn't always help. And, so when they got sent to you guys were able to get them to calm down a little bit. They're still rowdy, but you got them to calm down a little bit, and you're getting information in their head. You're teaching them things, and you're teaching them in a way that I could never do it. And I'm thankful for that. And, just seeing the growth, not only in the kids who I've not only taught, but I'm just seeing just from the ones that you guys taught, it's incredible. And me and Zeke have grown a lot as a duo too, in that we started off, it was kind of the same situation of we got thrown in there together. We were leading separate life groups, and one day we both had like 2 kids, and we just combined, and we stayed that way ever since. And since that day, our relationship has grown and blossomed. Yeah, he gets on my nerves sometimes. I'm like, dude, I can't be the only one teaching these kids. But he's a great help when he's locked in, and our friendship has blossomed. We've gone on trips together. We've roomed together.
Pause. Sorry.
And, we've had some really deep conversations. In fact, I was originally, when I first met Zeke, I was like, okay, this is another leader. Now, 3 years down the line, I'm at Target waiting in line. My sister's driving me crazy because she doesn't have any money and is asking me to buy her things. I'm like, no.
Sounds right.
And out of nowhere, I get a hug from the back. I'm like, what is
All right,
happening?
all right,
I get,
all right.
what is happening? And it's Zeke. And I was having a really stressful day. It was like 3 days to Christmas. I don't like being in situations where there's like hundreds of people. And that's exactly what it was. I'm never doing that again. And Zeke came in there, started talking to me. We had like a 15-minute conversation before I had to check out and leave. And in that 15 minutes, just that talk, it calmed me down.
Yeah.
Getting to talk to someone who I've grown with, who I have a relationship with. And I think those are so important, because originally I was that middle schooler was like, I don't need friends. I don't need people in my life. I can do this on my own. And I've grown from that. Now I realize that I need people in my life. And Zeke is one of those people now. I'd say that everybody on this set right here has had some role that they've played in my life. And I'm thankful for that. And so building those relationships is so important, especially on a walk through faith.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like when I break it down now, our last group that we had on a Wednesday, I told the boys and I told Alex, like Wednesday nights was always my favorite night because I got to pour into them, I got to be around leaders and stuff. But now my favorite night, now coming up, are going to be Mondays and Thursdays. Why is that? Because on Mondays I get to be in the group with those guys. And I told all my boys, I'm like, in order for me to pour into you guys, I've got to get poured into. I was like, they need to pour into me so I can pour into you. And like I said, I'm the youngest one there. I love it. I love these guys. Alex, the first time I actually had a good conversation with Alex was, I would say, probably like a couple weeks after we started leading together. He went and he was like, hey, let's take the boys to play some football right behind the Allen 8.
Yeah,
that little
at
field.
the Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club, thank you. Yeah, that little field back there. Alex and I literally stood in the parking lot till like 11:30 at night. we didn't know each other very well, but at that moment right there, we talked about very personal things that we were just able to open up. We were like, hey, you know, and that was something that Marksman had taught us on Thursday nights. We're going to have Marksman now, but we had both been through Marksman, and he was like, oh, hey, you know, I'd struggled with this, so I had opened up some stuff, and like I said, I had no idea who he was. But ever since then, it's been great. I've never gotten into a disagreement with him. I've never gotten into an argument with him. He even tells me arguing's stupid. And like I've never disliked him. I've definitely disliked you, but I've never disliked him in any kind of way. And I don't know if that's just because God knew that, hey, we need to be leaders together. Like, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, we're the closest, bestest brothers. We're blood brothers, but no. Like, that guy's my dog. Like, you guys are my dogs now because we were able to come together, do life with others. I've gone on trips with you guys. I've cuddled with you, right?
Oh.
Graham, he's got
I have
proof.
video evidence.
He has video evidence
throw
that we have
that
been in a sleeping
right
bag
here.
together. You and me, the most shy guy and the least shy guy. All right. I mean, at least we can tell who's wearing the pants in that. But anyways,
Wow.
no.
Wow.
But like you said, going to the whole community thing, I think that is top notch. I think that's something that everyone needs to really break down, and they need to be like, wow, look at who am I friends with? Are their goals aligning with my goals? Is their faith aligning with my faith? Or do I need to be called higher?
Yeah.
And I think that was something for me, is I was always the leader of like the sports or the lifting or stuff like that. But when it came to spiritual leading, you know, I thought I was a leader, but I messed up in a lot of areas. I was like, man, I yelled at the kids too much just now, or I did something wrong. And Alex had no problem calling me higher. He's like, hey, do this different. Or even you sometimes, you're like, hey, do this different. And I feel like that has definitely helped me. I mean, I still do think highly of myself. I think there's a lot of us that think highly of ourselves and stuff like that. But I can see how it's different now because I know that you guys as leaders have more experience in that area than I did when I first got here. And you guys were able to bring me to where I needed to be. And then I have people like Vaughn, Matt, other guys in Marksman around the church that can call me even higher. And I think that should be the main focus, is to grow. But don't stop there. Just, you know, keep growing. Keep, like Matt said, when you're trusted with this, God's going to give you this. And then when you're trusted with this, he's going to give you this. And once you keep doing more and more, you're going to see, like, man, why drink the Kool-Aid when you can swim in the Kool-Aid? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
why take just a little bit when you can have the whole thing, when God's like, hey, you know, I will give you everything, you know? Trust in the Lord, you know, just, you know, give it to me. I'll give you the desires of your heart. I mean, why wouldn't we do that?
You know, I don't know, but I think that so many people think that that's too hard.
You know, I love that, the too hard. I think that, I don't know, the price for success is a lot less than the bill from regret.
Yeah, no.
And I think that that's something that we should all stick with, is that the price of success is much less than the bill from regret. Because once you get that bill from regret, once you're like, man, I coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
it
audience,
messes with you.
here, real quick. Audience, don't confuse success with financials or with the traditional. Success is, true success is being who's God created you to be, to provide for your family, the people around you, and just lead people to heaven. That's success.
Oh, absolutely.
So don't like when you mention success, don't think, oh, he's, you know, like the price of not, you know, working and getting rich or whatever. No, he's talking about God, right?
Yes,
And
like
being a
pure
godly
spiritual freedom. I went to a conference in North Carolina a few months ago. Matt flew me out there with some guys from Marksman, and I met some very interesting people. I met some multimillionaires. I even met a billionaire. Guys that have a lot of money, that they've made it, they've done it. And the richest guy there, the biggest donor that donates hundreds of millions a year to this foundation that we went to, he showed me his car collection. And it was like a 10-car garage. It was like Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, Cobra, like everything you could think of, some of the nicest cars. And he was the happiest guy. And I'm like, man, how does he have both? But when I really started talking to him, he said, oh yeah, look, this was a McLaren that I just auctioned off. And I thought it was interesting. I'm like, you auctioned it off? Okay, well, you know, maybe he already has another one. No, all those cars in his garage, they're his, but he doesn't drive them. He doesn't keep them there. What he does is he would buy them cheaper, and then he would auction them off, and 100% of the proceeds that he would auction off, these 6-figure cars, these $200,000, $300,000 cars. He would auction them off, and he would take that money and he would use it toward pastors in Africa. And I thought that was like, it blew my mind. Like, this guy had all the money in the world. He had the supercars. He had what the world seems as success, but instead of driving it or instead of using it, he used that money to equip pastors in the Great Commission of making disciples of all nations.
Right.
He went and built houses down there for these kids. And I think that's something that really stuck with me, is that when I came back from that trip, I've always made a joke with my parents, and I've always been like, anytime like they've made me upset or something, like I wouldn't fight with them or anything. I would say, you lost your yacht privileges. And I would say, listen, I'm going to have a yacht one of these days, and I'm going to remember this, and you're not going to be able to get on my yacht. And it was just a joke, like a success joke, or like, oh, you can't fly on my helicopter. But I came back and I sat down and I had a conversation with them. And I was like, how could I sit comfortably in a $300,000 car when there are people at the church, there are kids at the church? On their prayer list to Santa, they were saying they wanted the heat turned back on, or they wanted more food, or there are people out here struggling. And our idea of success is all this abundance of money. Why not an abundance of life? Why not use that? And that's something I really had to ask myself. And I'm not putting anyone down if they have a supercar, if they made it. That's awesome. That's amazing. It is definitely still a want. But how could I sit there comfortably in a car like that, knowing there are so many people that struggle, knowing that we could give more than the 10% that God has asked us to give, and we could build our riches in heaven rather than on earth. And I think that is the visual proof of God and me changing me, because it was always, I always wanted the success. I always said stuff like that. I even had a video made for me at my graduation, and one of the people that spoke in the video was Vaughn. And he says, hey, you want to be a multimillionaire, you want it all, you want all that. And he even talked about that, but he says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And I noticed that when I started delighting myself in the Lord, the desires of my heart started shifting, and they started changing. And the more that I got in the Word, the more that I was around God-fearing people and like-minded people, the more it changed. And it was like, you know what? I wanna do this for Him. I want that life that I can go home happy. I can wake up happy. Maybe it's not the abundance of money, but it's changing that one person's life that changed those two people, and those two people changed that four people, right. And it did that. I think that is what a lot of people need to start focusing on more in 2025, and I think that's why, I guess, Matt, I've had a lot of talks with Matt that he goes back to the Thrive in 2025. There's a marriage conference that they're doing for it, but then there's also some other stuff that they want to go into of like kids, how can we thrive in 2025? How can teenagers thrive in 2025? Right? What can we do? What godly thing can we do to thrive? And I think the first thing that we should start doing is start giving to God more, because a lot of people our ages have jobs. A lot of us are focused on that success or that American dream lifestyle. I think if we started giving it to God and we started changing the desires of our heart, our whole 2025 can look different, rather than saying, man, I don't have $1 million, but I want $1 million by the end of the year. Right. Maybe if I started saying, not how much is it going to take to get there, but what do I have to do to get there? Like, hey, maybe I want to move out. Maybe I'm want to be a big boy like Alex over here living on my own. I'm like, not well, how much is it going to cost? But what can I do to get me to that point? Maybe I can, get another job. And at that job, I can give a little extra to God because I know He's going to keep blessing me. Right. And I think once people start doing that, they're going to start to see that domino effect of, if I give so much to God, He's going to give so much more back.
Mm-hmm. I honestly think the first thing that we should give, and I would even go so far to say maybe one of the most important things to give, is our time. Mm-hmm. Spending time in God's Word, spending time in His presence, in prayer, in fasting, in all these different areas. And I do think this kind of ties back into what we were talking about, relationships a little bit, because like Markus said, we have Monday night groups, and I go and I get poured into. But if I didn't have groups like that, if I didn't have that community of people, if I didn't have these relationships with people, then how can I expect to grow? How can I expect to be different if I'm not investing in the right relationships? If I'm not getting poured into, if I'm choosing the friends who just want to do the wrong thing, who just want to go about their lives doing whatever they please, and they just relish in all this sin, how can I expect to grow? And I think that's something that is really important, especially for the people who we interact with the most, with our boys, with just the youth in general, is who are you hanging out with? I know we've said quite a bit, during like sermons, who are you letting influence you? And so many of them get their influence by their friends or their peers. But if we can encourage them to get in these right relationships, to get in these relationships where you're talking about God, where it's an ongoing conversation of, hey, how are you doing? How are you doing with this? One of my best friends, she'll ask me about my porn addiction just randomly. And I'm like, bro, we're just going to get Sonic. Like, why are you asking me this? But it's because she cares. It's because she deeply cares about me. And she's like, I want to know how you're doing with this. I want to call you higher. And so by her actually doing that, it's inspired me to be more open about it. I've always been pretty open about it. But by her doing that, it's made me realize, you know what? I can ask my friends. I need to ask my friends. Because she's poured into me, now I've taken up these different things of, you know what? I'm going to ask my friends how they're doing with this. I'm going to ask my friend who's struggling with this, how are you doing? How was last week? And let's go from there. And I think whenever we look at what can young people do going into this new year with relationships, invest in better relationships.
Yeah.
Find a group of people, whether it's at your school, at your church, at your homie's house, in your homie's apartment that's really small.
Amen.
With his weird dog. Sorry, Mark. But
hopefully Mark doesn't see that.
Right? I'm kidding. But
He's not.
But no, find that group and just do life together. And I think that's one of the most important things to change is, are you really doing life together? Are you really doing it with the right people? Because the right people are going to push you in the right way. They're going to show you, hey, we can't be doing this. Yeah, we can mess around. Yeah, we can have fun. And we can enjoy life and live life to the fullest. But we can't relish in these certain things because of our beliefs. But we can do it together. So it's not as hard. So I think that's something that should be on everyone's list and something they really need to examine. And maybe you didn't have good relationships in 2024. Maybe you had a couple friends that you needed to cut out. But going in, just revamp it,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that going into that are also like actual relationships, like male and female, and that's something that I've been in the same relationship for a while now, leaving the whole football area and then coming into youth, into church, marksman, all that kind of stuff, and she stayed with me through the whole thing. But we have definitely had a lot of bumps. There have been some rough patches. There have been some things that have happened, some trust issues and stuff that I was like, man, I don't think I can get past this. But for some reason, we've been able to get past that. And I was thinking back in high school is like, anytime you had a problem in a relationship or anytime something happened, it was always you talk to your friends, and your friends were always like, oh, well, you don't need them anyways, do this. And it always seems like people are telling you what not to do.
Yeah.
Like they're always like, all your friends and all these people that you surround yourself with, they're always giving you the wrong advice. Like I don't take relationship advice from people who aren't married. And that's something that I learned from another guy that I watched online is like, why would I take that advice from someone who is not where I want to be?
Right.
Like we had went through some problems and we instantly went to Vaughn and Christy and we're like, hey, this is kind of what's going on. They helped us out with some stuff. We went to Matt and Ashton. We were doing things. Now we are about 50 plans in completed. We have done almost 50 Bible plans together. And that is something that we have definitely grown on. And that's something that I love is that we're always holding each other accountable for Bible plans on whether it's resolving conflict, changing the conversation, letting God steer your relationship, whatever it is. We have stayed in the Bible more. And that's because the friends around us have been like, hey, how are you guys doing in your relationship? We don't want to tear it down. We want to hear you guys out. We don't want to be like, oh, well, you don't need them anyways. We want to be like, how can you guys make this work? Because, love, if it is love, it's not supposed to break apart. Like, love is love. Like,
Love never fails.
yeah, love never fails. That's what it needs. And is it love? I would like to assume so. Yes. I'm still young. I'm still in that area of learning. But the things that I've learned is that in a relationship, especially for young men and women, is that they need to let God be the main character.
Base
I guess.
relationship.
Yeah,
God.
there need to be three people in that relationship, and then they also need to notice that it's not her versus him; it's them versus the problem. And like I said, just going into relationships, that's something that I've learned a ton.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of mistakes on both ends from both of us because we're young, we're learning. There are things that we do right, there are things that we do wrong. A little thing that I did wrong turned into something big that she did wrong, but it still stemmed from me. And like Matt said on stage one day, he's like, why did Eve go and eat the apple? Because Adam didn't leave her. And I think it's our job as men to step up and to start leading the woman. All these girls are the same. I'm in high school, but all these girls, they just want to talk to all the guys. They don't do all this kind of stuff. Well, that's because that's what we're teaching them. That's what the guys are teaching. Like, if the guys could just step up in their faith and start doing what God needs them to do, the girls are going to follow, even if they're not in a relationship. They're going to see the guys stepping up, and they're like, man, those are some real good Christian men. Maybe we want to follow and actually be Christian women. We don't need to go with lip gloss and crop tops and trying to put ourselves out there for validation. And us guys don't have to be like, man, is she talking to 50 other guys?
Right.
Is she doing this? No, if we could just all give it to God, you can see it unraveling and see how everything can be fixed, but we just need to step up.
Going back to the relationship advice thing, I think you're absolutely right. I think, and this happens a lot with girlfriend groups for sure, but it can happen with guys just as
absolutely.
much. Is when you're telling your friends, you go to your friends like every time that he does something wrong, and you're really not going to like, okay, from a girl's perspective, oh my God, he got me flowers. You're not really texting your friends about that. You know what I mean? You're thrilled and you're honored and everything. But, he said this, this, and this, and he did this wrong. You do go to your friends.
You do go to your
friends. You go to the group chat. I like to count the council. So you're
The council.
The council, that decides your relationship a lot of times, right? And it's a problem with girls, but like I said, it can happen with a lot of guys too. I know guys who have suffered from the exact same thing, and it's caused them to terminate relationships that really shouldn't have been terminated.
Yeah.
But it's like maybe it's not even your friends giving you terrible advice, but all they hear is how terrible this guy is.
Yeah, and that's a perfect way of putting it. Is we only talk about the bad
piece of stuff, and he is a terrible, and she is a terrible girlfriend, and you guys need to split up. Even though maybe the wrong thing that she did represents a very small fraction of all the right stuff she did, and the same thing, maybe the wrong thing that he did and he messed up in this area pales in comparison to all of the good stuff he did. But your friends aren't going to know that, right? And so when you're going alone into your friends who are going to be biased anyways, rather than seeking, like you said, that's a phenomenal thing to seek married counsel together. Mm-hmm. When you're going it and when you're attacking the issue rather than your partner, that's how you have a healthy relationships.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'm going to people that have been married for 10 plus, 20 plus years.
Right.
Like they've had the problems. Mm-hmm. They've known okay, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. How can we help you guys? And I always like to start off with a good. Like, man, she's doing this better. I'm doing this better. There are things that are better, but then this is where we're also struggling.
Right.
And like you said, sometimes I even have went to a friend of mine that he's younger, but he is married. And I was like, hey, some stuff had happened in the relationship. I'm kind of at a point that, the ball's in my core. What do I do? And, I'm not going to name any name drop or anything, but he was like, oh, just give up. Just instantly, he was like, oh, just give up. And, at the time, I did want to give up. I wanted to be like, you know what? I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm done. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to focus on myself, God, and just go on that path. And he was instantly like, give up. And that just, that didn't set right with me. Right. I was like, why just give up? And he, like I said, he's married. He's in the church and stuff. But sometimes you're not always going to get the best advice from someone.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, I respect your advice. I know what the story is. I love that, but I'm going to go to other people. I went to other people, like I said, like Mon, like Matt, some other people in the church that were married, Keith and Rachel. I went to them because they're my cousins and stuff. They were just, yeah. Rachel is my dad's first cousin. Did you
Really?
know that? Yeah.
So we've already had this conversation, haven't we?
I'm not sure.
I'm I'm like related to the. So we're like.
Wow, look at that. We're
probably
related
like
down
eighth
the
cousins or something like that.
eighth cousins or something. I'd say 10th probably. We don't-
Yeah, we're pretty distant.
Yeah, we're pretty distant.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Although we look alike, we're pretty distant.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, just going to different people about different things, and don't just go to one person. Like if there are several people you can go to several people. I had brought it up in my group. I was like, hey, my relationship is struggling. I'm like, this is kind of what happened. I was like, I need to get back on track. And none of them, you could ask any of them. I never shunned her. I never was like, hey, she did this, or I hate that she did that. I was like, hey, this is what happened, but it's also my fault in a way. And then I was like, hey, how can I fix this? And they're like, okay, well, you can. They all gave me their little pieces of advice and stuff like that. And even though they weren't married, they were still my boys that had my back. That were like, hey, don't give up yet.
Yeah.
We can see that you care about this individual. Do not give up. And they're like, even though it's really bad, they're like, just still try to move forward. Even if you're just focusing on yourself, do something to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about that, is that they were willing to help me. Even in a relationship, my friendships were helping my relationship.
Yeah.
And those two things were helping my leadership. So it's I think it's so funny that it all comes back into play.
Absolutely.
Is that once you start doing one thing, it's so easy just to let everything build off of, like, whatever it is. Like, whether you start a group first, whether you start coming on Sunday mornings first, whether you start coming to youth first. That's what I did. I started coming to youth, and the first person I talked to was Remington. I remember it like no problem. I came in here. I didn't know anyone. And I was like, hey, you're Remington, right? And he was like, yeah. And everyone was super welcoming. I started talking to you guys. I started, learning about you guys. I still didn't like this guy, but I was like, hey,
I was
like,
too quiet for him.
he was too quiet for me. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. He was just like that guy that stood in the corner, and I was not that guy, so it bugged me. But I got to know Bryce.
Let's
like,
also remember I was here for 4 years before that.
Yeah, he was
All
here
right,
for
all right.
4 years, and he didn't say a thing. Yeah, he was here for 4 years. He was one of the leaders. He was already a dog. but-
But let me. I'm gonna add this real fast because you guys are talking about relationships and whatnot. But let's just say hypothetically, because I let's say you're not in the right spot. Okay, let's say maybe there's some viewers who maybe they're like, but my relationship isn't really like that, because I was there. Because in my relationship, on the surface, it was great because we got along great. We loved each other very much. She has a very special place in my heart, but it wasn't what I felt like God was calling for us, because we started everything the way that we wanted to do it. Because we started with sex before marriage, with living together before marriage. And so when you go about that and you also try to do church, sooner or later they're going to conflict, and there were some conversations that I had to have with Pastor Vaughn, with Pastor Jeff, and I was really hoping that I could just keep it under the rug, like really just hoping, like, nah, I hope Vaughn just forgets about it. I just hope he really just
Nope.
glances over it. No,
Nope.
Vaughn did not forget about it.
He hits it right on the head.
And every time he never went about it, and this is why I love Vaughn so much. He never went about it as you're a terrible person. How could you be doing this? How could you be in the church doing this? How could you be doing youth doing this? He went about it in love. He was like, I know this is hard. I know this is difficult, because we all come from different walks of life. When her and I moved in together, it was because we both were like, no, this is the right thing to do. This is the modern thing to do. You live with your girlfriend before you get married. You just do that. That's what we believed. But whenever I started getting closer to God, there were things that started to reveal to me of, hey, maybe I'm not doing this right. Hey, maybe I need to change this. So, to the viewer who's sitting there like, well, I'm in that same boat. My advice is just listen to the conviction that's on your heart. Listen to that voice that's telling you, hey, you need to change something. And I remember there was one Sunday I was sitting in church, and Pastor Matt was preaching a sermon, and he said something like about listening to the conviction. And I was sitting there, I was like, I shouldn't have come to church. I was like,
Speaking right to
I
you.
That's
was
the
like-
worst.
I was like,
Oh.
oh, he's speaking to me. I should have just not come to church.
Mhm.
But I listened. I listened to the Lord, and I said, you know what, God? I'm going to jump. I'm going to take this leap of faith. I'm going to jump, and please catch me. And he caught me. And he also said, I got something for you. We did Rush Conference. We did just being able to be with my 8th grade boys, with the group, being able to do stuff like this. It's because I took that jump. It's because I listened to the conviction that God was placing on me. And I knew I can't keep hiding this. I can't keep doing both. Now, I'm not saying I didn't make any more mistakes after that. I still made a lot of mistakes after that. But I knew this area in my life needed to be fixed. This relationship, we were together for 3.5 years. So it was a long relationship. It wasn't like this week-long relationship. We were together for a long time. And we, like I said, very special place in my heart because, she was my best friend. But I knew I have to listen. I am called to listen. There is a conviction. There's a weight on my shoulders. I have to listen to the Lord. I have to trust him. And so when I did, he delivered 10 times. And so like I said, to the viewer who might be sitting there like, I can relate to this, it will be okay.
Yeah.
It will be okay. Trust God. Trust him in your relationships. And, try to do things the way that they were designed to be. And when we take matters, we said this at the very beginning of the podcast. We get in our own way. And, I trusted myself and I hurt 2 people. She trusted herself and she hurt 2 people. And so to the viewer, just take that leap of faith, and I promise you, God will catch you.
Yeah, I think that's really good because taking that leap it's hard, especially after some of the stuff that's happened in my relationship. Is taking that leap of being like, man, do I just give up? Do I just be like, you know what, we can't? There's no way coming back from this. I'm done. Let's just give up. But we took that leap and we're like, you know what? We'll step aside and we'll go and we'll seek God together, but apart. And that's what we did. And it worked. I mean, like I said, I talked to Matt weekly. She talked to Ashton weekly. Right. We got some advice. We talked to them together and stuff. And that stuff started working. And seeing that worked, I was like, oh, okay. But then there was a lot of things that we had to do. We both had to leave the friend groups that we were in. We don't have any of the old friends that we used to because they were all pouring bad things into our relationship. Because early on in high school, we've been together for about 3 years now. We did things wrong. Right. Like we were like, oh, we're gonna do what the world wants us to do because it's the cool thing to do. Right. We're gonna go to parties together. We're gonna do things behind closed doors together. But then once we started getting involved in the church, and I love it now because she's a teacher for the 3 and 4 year olds on Sunday mornings, and she loves it. She loves those kids. She loves being an influence in their lives and teaching them the Bible the way that they need to be taught because they're younger. And then she loves that I love teaching the 8th grade boys. They're a little younger, but then they're also going into that high school era of, okay, maybe I need to be cooler, maybe I need to do this, but then we can teach them that. But then seeing that God has just both brought us into the church, right, and he's given us passion for something. Right. I think that is amazing. And then going to Marksman to you have that fight, flight, or freeze, or you can just relax. In any situation, if you think the relationship's going to end, or if you think something's going wrong, or maybe there's something in the household, or something completely out of your control, you have that fight, flight, or freeze, or just to relax. And I like that the relax is an acronym of reading God's word, experiencing God's word, letting sin out quickly, accepting God's grace, and looking for the exit. And I love how they all build upon each other, especially the looking for the exit. And I think that's a big one, because if there's a little fight in a relationship or in a friendship or anything, we always tend to want to get the person back by doing the same thing they did to me, or by doing the same thing that they did to us, or whatever the scenario is we're always like, oh, well, maybe my girlfriend's talking to someone, so I'm going to go talk to someone. Why fix the problem that way? Why not look for the exit of, okay, that's going to turn into sin. That's going to turn into something bad. Why not look for the exit and then go read God's word, experience God's word to let that sin out quickly? Why not go do that? And once we learn to both do that, I mean, yeah, we still have our hiccups. We still have our bumps. And I'm not trying to give relationship advice in any sort of type of way. I'm only giving on advice on stuff that I've been through, stuff that I've done, and stuff that I've seen that works. Other than that, I can't give you relationship advice anywhere else because I'm not even there yet. I would like to say I'm there. I'd like to say like, oh yeah, we're going to be there. We're going to get married. We're going to move in. It's going to be happily ever after. But I can't even go into that and say that because I'm giving it to God. And I'm saying, you know what, Lord, if we're meant to be perfect, let us go together. If not, no hard feelings against her. She'll still hold a very special place in my heart. I need to let her do what she needs to do or what God created her to do.
Yeah, Father God.
And I think that's something that going into 2025 for all of us is letting God take control of us and then letting God take control of the people around us and see, maybe we end up with someone. Maybe we're friends with someone. Maybe we're doing a podcast one day years later after meeting each other and talking about this stuff. Like, God is just going to lead the way. Just let him.
Yeah.
Just let him take control.
Absolutely. Let God take control. Take that leap of faith, like Alex said. As you're going into 2025, rather than focus on resolutions, focus on leaving the past in the past, pushing forward, creating boundaries, and becoming who God needs you to be, not who you want to be.
Yeah. And, I'm going to say it. It's a new year. It's a new you. But remember, New Year's resolutions are really lame.
Cut
All right.
that too.
Thank you guys for checking out this video. And we're so glad to be moving forward into 2025 and starting this year off with Marcus and Alex. And we will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.